Ma'am, I'm there.
Yes.
Dr. Mansi is also there.
Okay. I thought Apurva can introduce you before that. Let me see if. Hi, Apurva, are you there already?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Okay, Apurva, go ahead and first introduce, and then we'll call Dr. Paula.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today we have with us Dr. Paula Mukherjee, Goel, and Dr. Mansi with us. We all know Dr. Paula, ma'am, because she's an ardent fan of Radical, and we see her. I would like to share a little brief about Dr. Paula. Dr. Paula Mukherjee Goel, she's an MD, DCH, PGDAP, PGP, Diabetology, John Hopkins School of Medicine, Diplomat, IBLM, US Board Certified in Lifestyle Medicine, PGP Psychiatry. She is the founder and director of Faith Clinic based in Mumbai, and she has over 32 years of experience in the field of medicine and health. She is also a member of the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Adolescent Health Academy, Indian Medical Association, and Society of Adolescent Medicine, USA. She is happy to help with overweight and underweight issues, growth and development problems, delayed puberty, menstrual problems, PCOS, adolescent diabetes, thyroid and high blood pressure, chronic headache, adolescent behavioral problems, and regular pediatric adolescent OPCD. So basically, ma'am, she's an adolescent expert. She's a diabetologist, specialist in lifestyle diseases. So today she's going to guide our journey, our parental journey, and she's going to give insight on parenting. And her vision is to inspire people with good health and balanced living. So today we warmly invite Dr. Paula Goel Mukherjee and Dr. Mansi to share their rich experience with us. You, ma'am.
Welcome, Dr. Paula. Good evening. I'm also putting Mansi, Dr. Mansi here. That spotlight. Yes, Dr. Mansi and Dr. Paula, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Atman ma'am and Radical, for actually giving this platform. It's indeed a big honor because we get to speak on a very favorite subject, I think, my favorite subject, and I think of all mothers' favorite subject, parenting. I think a lot of us, it's a very important topic, and it's a very big topic, actually. So we've tried to concise it and make it interesting as much as possible. So the topic which we are going to be speaking on today is building bridges with easy parenting. So before I start, let me ask you a question. How many of you have had difficulty dealing with your child? And you know that you know the right answers, but it does not work. And you are just left wondering, what has gone wrong? And how can this be corrected? How many of you can relate to this? If you can, type yes in the chat box. Does any of you feel? Yeah, correct. So parenting is basically, if you look at it, it's a lifetime job, and it does not stop as the child grows up. It's a lifetime work which you have to do. And there is nothing which is called as a perfect parent. So we just have to be a realistic one. So sometimes just a loving hug, it can ease a lot of doubts and sorrows. So with this, I would just introduce Dr. Mansi. She's my colleague at Faith Clinic, and she does a lot of work with me on parenting issues. So welcome, Mansi. And we thought that instead of going the complete didactic way, we'll have it in the form of a conversation, and we will try to cover up as much of the points that we thought would be useful to you.
Thank you, Dr. Paula, ma'am. It's an honor to be here, and I thank Atman ma'am and the Radical group for giving us this opportunity here to talk about our insights on parenting. Most of us become parents and do a relatively good job at it. But then why then do we need to understand parenting is the question here. So, ma'am, can you tell us on that?
So if you look at it, traditionally, the purpose of parenting was to raise and care for children, to provide for them, to provide them guidance, support, love, care, so that they grow up and become healthy and well-adjusted adults, to counsel them, and also to provide as a buffer and cushion for your child. But is parenting just that? So is it just children whom we give birth to? So a lot of us have pets, right? And we also become pet parents. So also we parent our own parents in their old age. So in my opinion, parenting is something when you take accountability and responsibility for another living being and looking after their needs. But in the broader aspect, when we look at parenting also gives us, for an individual, it gives meaning to our existence, because that is the point when we start looking beyond our own needs to the need of another individual. So parenting teaches us certain skills. Now, whether we learn those skills consciously or subconsciously, it's a very different thing, but it does teach us skills. So I will just share a few facts and figures with you here. So according to the UN report, about 4.5% of Indian households are run by single mothers, which is approximately about 13 million. 46.7% are nuclear families. Single parents, mother or father families, they are about 12.5%. And in the major metros, if you see, about 70% of the parents, they do not have time for their children because of this crazy work-life balance, which they are not able to adjust and adapt. And almost 75% of all parenting jobs are spent in academics, so academics plays a very important role. Apart from that, the next point comes in chatting with them, snacking with them, watching some media together, going for films, generally fun times together.
So, doctor, you have mentioned that 70% of parents do not have time with children in metro cities. So was parenting always like this? But why there is a gap now, or rather, why do we feel the need to learn about parenting?
So if you see in India, parenting was always the responsibility of the joint family in the earlier days, So there was grandparents, uncle, aunts, extended family, and even neighbors played a very important role in parenting. Traditionally, the gender roles were very well defined. So you have the fathers or the men who go out to work. They were the breadwinners of the family. And the women generally stayed back at home and they became the primary caretakers. But over the years, if you see, the parenting trend has generally shifted. Okay, so now the mothers to go out, all right, and they become breadwinners and primary caretakers. Then the traditional households of the joint family have declined. So it's mostly nuclear families. You have single parents also, single mother, single father. And the most important thing is high inflation. High inflation has hit parenting very badly. And this is also the time when many children as young as 6 or 7 years of age also are kept alone at home. So it's a very dangerous scenario.
So, ma'am, the scenario now has changed. So do you think inflation has affected parenting?
Yes, of course, because with the high cost of things, the money which was earlier in the joint families were pooled. Now the money becomes scarce. So both parents have to go out to work. And so they have less time for their children. Typically, as we see, the mother is the caretaker of the child, even if she's a working woman. So when she comes back home after work, she is exhausted, she's stressed, she's got so much of work to do. Her physical body does not support her. And most of the time, she prefers to actually give ready-to-eat meals or processed food. As a result, you will see a large number of children are actually becoming obese. Then there is a pressure of the career, parental fights occur, and the children are there absorbing and seeing everything. They are just silent spectators. Then there is poor communication skills. So the irritation which is there outside at work, finally it comes home and it has to come out on someone. So who is the person it comes out on most? The child, because the child is the defenseless individual, the youngest in the family, and it is not given out in a direct way. It is given out in a very, very indirect manner. Now, as the supervision of the child decreases, what happens? The child actually starts getting into different companies. So either the gadget is given to them, so they are on gadget for a long period of time, and they're going through different sites and wrong sites and gaming, or they find friends which are not so healthy friends, and they get into the wrong company. Now, to overcome this barrier or overcome this problem, now then parents start resorting to different parenting techniques. Some of them are not very healthy. There could be compensatory mechanisms, like you have neglectful parent, permissive. We'll talk about that later on. And this is where your family dynamics are completely affected. Does this make sense?
Ma'am, with the mention of family dynamics, as a result of inflation, which has affected the families, could you share your experience on this to understand better?
So yes, so I will share one of my patient experiences over here with you. And I have changed the name to maintain the privacy and the confidentiality of the patient. So this boy, Mohammed, he came to me when he was 15 years old. Today, he's 24 years old. And in those days, his family was going through a very tough situation. There was a lot of financial crisis. His father had taken into alcohol and his mother was working. Even his grandmother had started work, to support the family funds. So he was generally left alone by himself and he fell into the wrong company. He gave up school. He dropped out of school. He started smoking weed. He started taking alcohol with his friends. And not just that, he started actually beating up his mother and grandmother when they would not give him money. And when they got him to me, he was actually referred to me by one of my senior pediatrician colleagues, saying that this is the child which he's been looking after, but he does not know how to actually get through to the boy. So when I got to understand Muhammad, he was absolutely angry. He was so angry with everyone. And even it was one of the most difficult cases of my life. But I had to literally spend a lot of time impressing on him the importance of health, because that was the only thing which he was receptive to. And as we started talking about health, he got actually sober. And then things improved for the better. And we did counseling for the parents and the grandparents, and he improved. So today, Muhammad is the breadwinner of the family. So this is something which turned out well. But not all cases really turn out well. So every child has got a potential which needs to be tapped. But the question is, who is going to tap the potential? Is it parents? Do they have the time, the effort, and the energy to tap the potential of the child? Or are we looking at the schools to tap the potential of the child? So if you look at this in this case, Muhammad, his father had got into alcohol, his mother and grandmother were into work because they needed to generate funds. And also in such a scenario, you will realize that the family dynamics become so skewed that there's a lot of finger pointing which starts occurring. Finger pointing at each and every person and trying to find a scapegoat. And the easiest scapegoat in all scenarios you will find is the defenseless child, because the child has no defenses to fall back on. But however, we need to remember one thing. The children are clever. They're small, but they're clever. And they have this great adaptation skill. And they are going to adapt rather rapidly. So in many households, the child adapts by seeing his parents and then aligns himself to either one or both the parents rather subtly to get his or own way out of it. Or they try to take advantage of the situation and find friends outside, somebody who's going to support them, be for them, talk to them. So this is what occurs. And this is exactly what occurred with Muhammad as well.
So, ma'am, do you think that parents have certain beliefs regarding teenagers, particularly?
Yes, parents have beliefs it's not just parents, it's a societal belief, not just against teenagers, but against children per se. I can only talk about children and teenagers because this is my line. So regarding teenagers, most of the time we say, oh, they don't listen, they fight, they get into wrong company, they are with girls, they get into addictions, attraction to the opposite gender, so many things, we sort of start labeling onto them. And many times you will find that, or at least I see that when they get such a child, which has been very badly labeled, and the teenager or the child is sitting with their head bowed down, and everybody is actually pointing fingers at them and saying, oh, you know what, this is what happened, he doesn't study, gets poor marks, so much of money is gone, and it goes on. And the child is just sitting over there. Parents sometimes become very vicious. Now, what happens to that teenager? Now, the doctor is also a stranger. The teenager sees, absorbs, and then they start thinking that, well, I'm labeled, I'm judged. So good. So why should I not behave like this? This is who I am. So what happens? Does this become a reality or it becomes a belief? What do you think? What do you think becomes to it? A reality or a belief? Why don't you type in the chat box? What do you think occurs? Yeah.
Well, ma'am, could you tell about younger children?
Yeah, in the younger children also. Sometimes
Well, here we have both answers, belief and reality.
yes, it becomes. So let me get over here. So even for the younger children, many times you will find that the children are becoming very clingy. So the parents will typically come and tell me, my child has become very clingy and I need to send the child to a preschool, but I don't know what to do because there's so much of stranger anxiety and the child doesn't seem to leave me and the child is just doing wah, wah, wah and clinging. And there is so much of temper tantrums. They become fussy eaters. They don't want to eat. They don't listen. And my child is so rigid. So rigid. I don't know what to do. Please help out. And again, also much of venting situations come up. And you will find that again, the small child is standing over there with that guilt look on the face, but absorbing and hearing everything which is being spoken about him or her. And then when you look into the child's eye, the child has a very defiant look in the eyes as if to say, well, I know you are no different. My mother has got me to you and you are going to be the same. So that's again where the child actually starts internalizing this whole process. And so what actually started out as a belief system, from the parents' end becomes a reality. It becomes a complete reality and the entire reality is played out over the entire spectrum. This is what happens.
So is parenting the same while dealing with different age groups? Or, it differs?
So parenting, some components of parenting will remain the same throughout life, but the approach towards parenting is going to be very different. So as parents, we know that there has to be a connection. So it means that you need to show your love, listen, provide support, show respect, connect to them. But also in addition to that, there are certain skills which parents need to develop. So you need to have empathy, understanding, communication skills, negotiating skills, critical thinking skills, decision-making skills, creative thinking skills, problem-solving skills, interpersonal skills, coping with your own emotions as parents. Many times, see, as parents, we always say, please cope with your emotions. But you may lock yourself in a room, you may do whatever you wish to do, but your child will sense. So it's not good to hide your emotions from your child. However, you should not exhale, which means you do not keep on burdening your child with adult problems. Now also, parents should have the ability to take initiative, which means that if there is a fight with your child, say you have a teenage child and there is a fight, you have to take the initiative to communicate with your child. You should not sit with your ego thinking that, oh, I'm the parent, the child needs to come to me. Then, other thing which you need to provide, this is specifically important for teenagers, is autonomy. Autonomy comes in two forms. You have emotional autonomy and behavioral autonomy. So when we speak about emotional autonomy, this is when your teenager starts perceiving you, the parent, as an individual. You are no longer the caregiver. You are a person, as a friend, a person, or whatever, an individual. So if you are going to be judgmental about your child is also going to be judgmental about you because this is the time when they are also going through their own processes. Similarly, in the behavioral autonomy, this is when they start taking their decision-making skills. And we need to allow them to develop that decision-making skills. However, when some parents don't understand and they give, they do not set boundaries and they give their decision-making skill rather rapidly in early teens, it can lead to poor academic performance as well as defiant behavior, deviant behaviors, and all these problems can actually come up. Okay. So I think Mansi has already put these components of parenting in the chat.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mansi.
I have put it on the chat for them to understand better.
Okay, so my question over here to all of you is, can you write down which skill you need to improve because she's already put the skill. Which skill you need to improve in your communication or it's a component of parenting, which you, and what emotion comes up when you think of that skill? Can you just put it in the chat box?
You can check it on the chat box, which I have put the components of parenting. You can name the skill from there and put down your emotions along with it in the chat box.
So Atman ma'am has written communication skills. Priya Rajput has written combination, okay, decision-making skills, negotiating skills. Yeah, actually, if you see, it's a combination of all skills, because communication is primarily very important. But along with that, when we see that decision-making also plays a very important part, negotiating plays a very important part. So all of them become a very important role, and we need to understand them that this is what we need to develop in ourselves as parents.
So, ma'am, can you tell us more on this different parenting techniques?
Yeah, so there
as
are
you had
multiple,
mentioned previously.
yes. So there are multiple parenting techniques which are there. I'm going to go through it rather rapidly. So one of them is called as the authoritarian parent. So authoritarian parent is one who is very demanding and very little responsive. So they are like very dictators, and their children have to be very obedient to them. The children don't respect them, but they fear them. So these children turn out to be very aggressive, and in school they become bullies. And in adulthood, they may also suffer from anxiety. Then the second variety which you have is the authoritative parent. Now these parents are less demanding and they're responding. So they respond to their child. They have good negotiating skills. They have all these skills that we talked about. So their children turn out to be friendly, socially compatible, confident, they are self-reliant, and they become responsible and accountable as adults. The third we have is the uninvolved or the neglectful parent. Now these parents are completely low on response, and they honestly are the ones who don't care. They are non-demanding, non-responsive. So their children are very withdrawn and they are non-compliant. They perform poorly in school and academics, and they have poor relationships. So these are completely parents who are like completely cut off. They don't care. Then you have the permissive parents. Now the permissive parents are extremely responsive. Okay, they are so responsive, but their demand is very less. So these are the parents who we say they put the children on their head. वो सिर पे बिठाने वाले parents होते हैं. They put the child on their head. So they will agree to everything the child says. Okay, and they do not provide any structure for the child. So these children then grow up to be, they don't have self-discipline because the parent does everything for them. They are immature. They become demanding, rebellious, and they also become aggressive. Okay, then you have the martyr parent. Now this, a lot of Indian parents are the martyr types, like they will do everything for their child, but also they will keep on reminding them, I did this for you, I did this for you, I did this for you. And this is going to come out at different points in their life. So these parents actually become very manipulative parents, and the children become dependent and they feel very squeezed. Then you have something which is called as a pal parent. Now, pal parent is like a permissive parent. However, a permissive parent is not going to exhale or throw out their problems on their child. Now, the pal parent is one that, okay, my child is my friend, so I can exhale. I can throw out every problem which I have in my life on my child because my child is my friend. And typically these are single parents, they could be, or many times they want to exhale about their relationship with their spouses. So they start throwing out this onto their children. Then you have the officer or the police sergeant drill. Now, again, these are like the authoritarian parents. It's my way or highway. I will play the rules and you will have to be obedient and follow them. So again, these children are also have no voice and they become very dependent. Then you have the teacher counselor parent. Now this teacher counselor parent is like a counselor who will take full accountability of their child. to such an extent that even if the child does something wrong, the parent will say, this has occurred because I have not brought up my child well. There is something wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with my child. So these children do not take accountability and they get accustomed to being praised. So when they don't get the praise as in their adult life, they find it very difficult and hard to cope with it. And one of the last ones we have is the athletic or the coach parent. Now this parent is like a typical coach. They will identify the problems, guide them, but they will not do it. They will tell the child that I'm there to guide you, support you, help you, but you need to do it. In addition to them, there are a few more like helicopter mothers, tiger mothers, dolphin mothers. So these are some of the common parenting styles which are there.
So, ma'am, which, according to you, is the correct model of parenting technique?
So if you look at all of them, the most balanced one are the authoritative ones and the athletic coach ones. So these are the parents who are more balanced, who have a set of, make a structure, communicate well, and follow the structure themselves.
Okay. For the viewers, I have already put the types of parenting on chat, so they can.
So you can tell what sort of parenting do you think you are? So even if you don't want to say it over here, you can do it in your space, so you will know where you need to improve on the skills.
Well, ma'am, till they put that down, could you brief us on the effects of poor parenting? Like we saw different types. So which is the, what are the effects of poor parenting?
So poor parenting, as we said, like all these parenting different things, they have a lot of effects on the children. So one of the commonest effect is that there is low self-esteem, difficulty in forming relationships, impulsivity, there is aggression. It could be in the form of active aggression or passive aggression. They could become bullies or they could get bullied in school. Academic performance suffers, or they get so drilled into academics that they have no life apart from academics. Many of these children also have difficulty in concentration, and the incidence of anxiety and depression increases in these children. Many of them can get into risky behaviors like substance abuse, criminal activities. High risk behaviors also include like extremely fast driving, addictions. So all these may come up. And in addition to this, you have the physical health problems, like there is overweight, obesity, because if mothers are not cooking or there's a lot of money which is given to the children, they order food from outside, Swiggy, and so many varieties are there. So there is no control on what they are eating. So obesity is one factor. Along with obesity, you have you get high BP, diabetes, PCOS. All this comes up, joint problems crop up. And other times you have very strict parenting where the mothers are very obsessed with the looks, especially for a girl child. And like you have children as young as 8 or 9 years of age who are going on stringent diets. Why? Because they should not put on weight. So the body shaming starts very early. And all this is the effect of very poor parenting skills, because we don't need to actually instill these behavioral traits and values of body shaming at such a young age. But this is what occurs.
So, ma'am, till now we've discussed the different types of parenting, but what does parenting actually depend upon?
So parenting, if you see, is a very complex process, and it also depends upon two main factors. So I'm going to discuss the parent characteristics here. Now, parent characteristics will depend on the parent's age. At what age the parent became individual became a parent. Okay, so whether if the individual, say the mother was only 19 years old, 20 years old, so she's a child, her brain has not matured, so obviously she doesn't understand. So the age of the child, then again there is a difference between male and female parenting. So the gender, belief system, personality, the knowledge about parenting. And parental personality becomes very important. You know why? Because if two parents have very starkly opposing personalities, but let's say the mother and the father have got personalities which are completely clashing. So what message does the child get? So again, the parenting over here gets skewed because both the parents have to be at one point. They have to function as a unit. And if you are having other family members at that point of time, so there's a lot of mayhem which starts occurring. Now we have to understand that the child is a silent observer, right from birth, silent observer, observing everything and taking it in. And once they're taking it in their own brains, there's a cognitive brain even in a one-day child which starts functioning and they start understanding. So this, it becomes very important. Also, we need to understand what sort of parenting did the parent have. So if the parents had parents who were very strict, did not give them liberty, they may follow the same style, or they may go to the point of permissive parenting or pal parenting. You get my point? So again, that's not correct. Then of course, certain community beliefs are there, which sort of like say, okay, the academics have to be in this way, the career has to be like this. So these are the beliefs which the parents are carrying with them because the community and the society in which they live. Like, I'll give you a typical example what they say. हमारे घर पे ऐसा नहीं चलता है. This is a very common dialogue. हमारे घर पे ऐसा नहीं होता है. What is meant by हमारे घर, I have not yet figured it out up till now. And how can you generalize and say हमारे घर और तुम्हारे घर? So if in a house you have multiple people saying हमारे घर and तुम्हारे घर, it's confusing to the child. Also, suppressed anger. Now, suppressed anger occurs in adults and suppressed anger occurs in the kid also. And that has to be addressed because if this is not addressed, it leads to major problems in parenting. Major problems. And needs
So,
to be
ma'am, what
addressed.
I understand is, does expectations from our relationship with the children make it difficult? And why are so many battles there?
Battles. So if you look at it completely from a neutral point of view, you have your child and yourself. Okay. So it can be a very simple, nice, loving relationship. Okay. But what happens? We get in a lot of extraneous factors, expectations, and expectations are beliefs from the society, what society tells you to do. Okay, I am a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a CA, so my child has to be this. Or in our house, we have to do things in this particular way. Also, as we said before, with a lot of parents going to work, especially mothers going to work, there's a lot of stress which occurs at the work front. So typically when there is stress, let's say, there is going to be a flight or a fight response. And typically when that occurs, the hormone cortisol, it increases in the body. Now, what does the cortisol do? The cortisol increases your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your creates panic, anxiety, irritation, and it causes inflammation with your body. Now, the child, as we said, is observing you, okay, and is observing your body language and is also observing everything. So you become irritable, cranky, this thing. So the child is observing it and does not understand, but subconsciously the child knows that the mother is irritable or the father is irritable and angry. And this is where the child's fear response also gets aggravated because the child is thinking, if my parents are angry, what is going to happen in the house? So this is where the child's fear response starts building up and the child's cortisol level also goes up. Now, when this occurs, the cortisol level goes up, the other two hormones, the serotonin and the dopamine, which is your happy hormones, the endorphins, they crash down. So these are the hormones which are the happy hormones. They fall and your cortisol level rises and it blocks your emotions from opening up. And at this point of time, as a parent, your environment takes over. And literally, as I said, there is a pot boiling on your head. Even if you put water on your head, your water will also boil on your head. There is so much of anger and irritation which is occurring. So what happens to your unconditional love, devotion, trust? It doesn't play anywhere into the picture. And this is what your child sees. So when we talk about parenting from the soul, it doesn't occur. Now, you are thinking in your head, okay, I'm going to be the ideal parent. And, this is a very simple thing I have to deal with. But your child is having a different answer, especially if he's a teenager. At that point of time, he's having behavioral autonomy. He's having emotional autonomy. So he's thinking, this is my way of working with it. And I don't conform to what my parents say. So there is going to be compartmentalizing on both sides, and judgments are going to keep on coming from both angles, whether it is parent or whether it is children. And when that occurs, what happens? Nobody likes to be judged. And this is where control issue starts. And then parents start trying to lead their life also through their child. This affects the bonding. And many parents feel that they can talk to their children, and even the children feel they can talk to parents only on certain topics, and the other topics are taboo. We cannot talk on them. And since the child senses this, they will start bonding with the gadget, because the gadget is not going to judge them, or they will bond with their friends because the friends are not going to judge. Now here, the parent will start feeling neglected. And in that frame, when they see the child with the phone, they'll say, oh my God, my child is not studying. I have to put him into classes. I have to put him into tuition classes, hobby classes, or otherwise, what is my child going to do in his life? So when you put your child into so many multiple classes, the creativity is completely lost. The child feels boxed in, irritable, angry, and this is where so much of, cauldron starts occurring, because the child is feeling cornered, stressed, unhappy, becomes aggressive. So when you start trying to have a conversation, it leads to a battle. So the question here is, you have to ask yourself this question as a parent. Is your inherent stress or within yourself leading to all this? Because if you are happy, your child is going to be happy right from childhood, because your child is observing you. If a parent is unhappy, the child also is going to be unhappy, because finally the child is going to mirror your behavior. So honoring, I think, yourself by accepting what is going wrong with you in your life, in your health aspects, in your work aspects, in your career aspects, and in all aspects of life is very important, because unless and until you acknowledge that, you will never be able to bridge that gap, between your parent. And as you start doing that, you will realize that your child is not getting so triggered. And there is a point where you can actually have a calm conversation with your child, and all these battles finally then settle down. I think I took a lot of time explaining this, but it was necessary for me to, put it into the structure like this.
Parenting is a vast topic, and with a few topics we can just concise it to a certain level. I would like you to share a few tips on how to look after my child better.
Yeah, sure. So one is that we know that parents create children. So we know in nature there is creation and connection, which is very closely knit. So the first thing I would say is give space. Communication is very important, and communicating on a positive note. If you are not in a positive frame of mind to communicate, please get up and move into a different room. Do not communicate. Give praises to your child, but not false praises. Spend time. And most important thing is stop fixing things. It's okay. If the room is dirty, it is fine. If the things are strewn around, it is fine. Only the room has to be ventilated so that good oxygenation occurs in the room and the child remains fresh mentally. You have to set boundaries. And when you set boundaries and structure in your house, you need to speak to your child in an open manner which is acceptable to them also. You have, as a parent, have to be consistent in your actions, because if you are not consistent and your stand keeps on changing like this daily, children get very confused. You need to give independence, which means that they have to develop decision-making capacity. So we need to understand that each family and each child is actually different, and they have to work on themselves. So, and if you are finding problems in anything, you have to, at that point of time, take professional help to help you.
Okay, ma'am, with the exams on these, it's an exam season on. So could you share some tips for what parents should do before and during the exam?
Yes. So during exams, who is stressed? I think is the parents who are more stressed than the children, So at this point of time, it is necessary for parents themselves to get calmed down. They should not get triggered. They should not try to go and say, okay, give me your studies. I will take up your studies. But just provide unconditional love ensure that physically, mentally, emotionally, they are in a good space. Their room is ventilated. If they have to talk, allow them to talk. Do not give your opinions at that point of time. Just lend a ear. Open communication is very important, but do not ask too many questions. Food. Food becomes very important because many children don't eat and parents then try to push them to eat, or some eat too much. So ensure that there is good hydration in the form of water, nimbu pani, chas, which you can provide. Avoid fruit juices and again carbonated drinks because they contain a lot of sugar, and sugar will make the child very drowsy and lethargic. So give high fiber food, protein food, and a lot of fluids, and ensure that your child sleeps well. Sleep is very important because when you sleep, a good restful sleep, it actually processes your memory better, and it improves your cognition and your rejuvenation, and it improves your focus and concentration. So this prevents the brain fog. So many times when they go to appear for the exam, like they're so fogged in their brain that they say, I don't know. So a good night's sleep is very important. So if as parents you follow these few things, I think more or less your child is sorted and you are also sorted.
So, doctor, in my opinion, we should become smart parents so that we can identify our children's weakness and strengths. We can monitor their child progress of the child. We can build bridges with our kids. We need to be adaptable and change our mindset as parents, accept both sides of the coin, who we are and also from the child's perspective. Accepting ourselves and our child is more important. And as time flies, we know children grow up and would soon leave home, and we would be faced with an empty nest syndrome, like a lonely house. And so we need to make the most of our time together with our kids. Am I right, ma'am?
Yeah, yes.
So, ma'am, with this, could you share some message on parenting with our viewers?
Yeah, actually you shared most of them, but from the radical perspective and also from other perspective also, I will share what are the teachings. So one, what does parenting teach us? So unconditional love, creativity, honor, respect, patience, self-acceptance of who we are, self-realization, and basically integrating ourselves and our own awareness. And it helps us to connect and communicate with our children. This is also a teaching. Give space. So we should learn to be a cushion and a buffer. And acceptance. I just keep on saying acceptance. This is very important because from the radical perspective also it is important. So, and all of us are radical practitioners are over here. So we can work with a lot of these issues which are there with respect to your child. So when you know what are the different parenting styles and the skills and what you need to develop, you need to see whether there is acceptance, whether there is gratitude, whether we are grateful we have this child who comes to us. You know, as what is it that I'm supposed to learn from my child? So this also I think is very important. You know.
So with this, we come to the end of our conversation. But before we end, I would like to inform you that we have a 3 days online program for parenting as well. If you are interested to know more, you can contact either me or ma'am. And if you require any other help, you may get in touch with any of us and we can help you out.
Yeah, 1 minute, Mansi. And other thing which I want to say, the solve dissolve statements work very well over here. So if you look at the solve dissolve statements which we have in Radical, they work wonders. They actually work wonders because I have been doing it for my own child also, and for some of Mansi has been doing it for her kid, and we have been doing it for some of the parents, and it really works very well because if you identify the point where your emotion is stuck and what you need to do. So when we do the solve dissolve statements, they work beautifully and the whole thing sort of calms down. This is what I would like to add. So if there are any questions now, I can take them.
I have shared the numbers where anybody can contact us for any further help required.
And we get some radical perspective, you get stressed easily. Yes, so stressed, you remember, when you get stressed, you have to tell your brain. Sometimes it is also helpful if you are logical at that point. Correct, Atman ma'am? I don't know. I am just thinking ki from a very logical perspective.
We believe in integration of conscious mind, subconscious mind, and soul. Heart, head, and soul has to come together. Having a one-sided approach is not going to help. We are here with our brains, and the brain's been given for a reason. We need to use it.
Yes.
I totally agree.
Yes. And at that point of time, if at least if they are able to say, look at their own health and think that, okay, my cortisol level is going to go up, and with the cortisol increase, my health is going to suffer and many other things are going to come up, then automatically they will be able to integrate themselves, the stress. And of course, the radical statements are there, which are extremely good. I have been using them myself. So especially the salt dissolve statements, they work wonders.
Dr. Mansi, those statements that you have given here, can it be given on WhatsApp? I'll put it in the group.
Yeah, sure. I can
I'll send it across to you.
Please. So we can put it in the group so people can, go through it later also.
Yes. I'll share them with you. So Nitkil is asking, can we get some information on toddlers who are not responding to their name by 15 months, showing signs of ASD? So you see, you have to do radical. You can do radical, but at the same time, it is always also better to get screened for the spectrum, the autistic spectrum. But if also, when you're talking of one thing which I need to understand, if there are multiple languages also which are spoken to the child will get confused. And what is the level of interaction with the child? So everything is not on an ASD spectrum. You also need to figure out how much of time is spent with the child, who is the caretaker of the child, and also which language the child is being spoken to. If the child is taken care of by the nanny and the nanny is speaking, parents are speaking different languages, neighbors are speaking different languages. So 3-4 languages may cause confusion. That can also occur, and that may also be one of the reasons. Also, you need to get the hearing testing done if it's not already been done. Anything else?
So I would like to wind up this because we've overshot the time.
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry.
With a little, inconsistencies on our end.
Can you unpin us now?
Yeah, sure.
Can you unpin us?
Let me get it instead. Wait. Yeah, a second. Just a second. Spotlight. So I know it was Apurva who was to say thank you, but since I'm here and I just couldn't go away, even though I had guests over here, my ears were all the time here. It was pretty interesting.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for honoring and taking this time out to speak to us. And I also wanted to tell our dear radical students that we always position radical more as a complementary modality and not an alternative modality. It's a self-healing and self-help modality. However, if I come across anything, I first say, please get medical diagnosis out of the way first. Okay, you can help yourself, but do not ignore early symptoms at times. When you catch any disease or ailments early, it really helps in the right treatment and right approach. So it's never at the cost of available help. Everything has its own place. For small little things, yes, you can start helping yourself, but if anything becomes chronic or anything that feels that it's not in our control or handled within a short span of time, it would be always good idea to consult. Dr. Paula has been one such medical professional. I trust and have so much of faith in. And if there are conflicting diagnoses, anybody is going through, the first thing that I said, go and meet Dr. Paula, she'll guide you correctly. So, yeah, and very happy and proud to have you around us. And, it's more like a support to have the right guidance in today's complex world of medicines. So, yes, having children is getting more complex with the complexities of the days, and bringing them up is still more challenged now for few people. However, it would be a good idea sometimes to even consult and have a look if there's something that you can do at your end correctly. Having a little bit of know-how and knowledge would be a good idea. There were times when tribals did not need any school of parenting. But today, because there are so many schools, children are distracted with. So we need to be schooled as parents. That's irony of life, but that's how it is. Do feel free to reach out to her and learn more from her if you're about to be a parent, or if you're going through challenges as a parent, both, right? It would be for both, right?
Yes, but ma'am, one thing I want to add over here, Radical has got very good statements. And I am just so, I know you will not like to hear it, addicted to dissolve. And actually, it is so wonderful because the emotional component which comes up, that is taken care of so beautifully that the entire stress comes down. So when the stress comes down, see, medically, the cortisol level falls. So all the ill effects of the cortisol go down. So it is such a beautiful connect, that I feel like every time singing when I do this. The connect is so beautiful. Once the emotion gets stabilized, the cortisol level falls. So your heart rate, anxiety, perspiration, everything gets stabilized. So the happy hormones, endorphins, serotonin and dopamine surge occurs. So automatically the mood is lifted. Inflammation goes down. So if we are able to follow this up, in a beautiful way, so the incidence of, we actually have started doing it in a lot of our diabetic patients also, the diet part and positive psychology. So I'm also trained in lifestyle medicine from the US, and they follow positive psychology. There's an entire full component of positive psychology, which is sort of done along with, on a research basis. How this has been found to be so useful in bringing down inflammation. So you see, this is the connect, and it is such a beautiful connect.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mansi, for bringing
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
You also, and we look forward to some more informative workshops like this, and to get more and more knowledge from the people who are genuinely interested and helpful to reach out to so many people. Thank you so much, and gratitude on behalf of Circle of Peaceful Progress, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Radical family, it's been a pleasure always. Thank you. Lots of gratitude.